Chapter 40, Joe. Do you know who the card belongs to? Mrs. Beam asks Lucy. Lucy nods, but doesn't move. Is something the matter, Lucy? asks Mrs. Beam. I don't want to see the leeches, she whispers. What's so scary about a couple of old stupid worms? Sneers Dylan. Ever since Mrs. Beam shut down his superstar routine, he's been acting kind of grumpy. Lucy gives him a dirty look. Hallelujah! Maybe this means the wedding is off. Ravi has his hand up. Yes, Ravi, says Mrs. Beam. I notice she says his name right for the first time, with the accent on the second syllable. Could you please tell Lucy Mulligan that the lid on the jar is screwed on very tight? My grandfather and I made sure of that. The leeches will not escape. Nothing to worry about, see? He lifts the jar and turns it upside down. No water leaks out, but turning the jar over like that gets the leeches all freaked out, and they start wriggling around even more than before. I expect Lucy to start screaming again, but instead she walks over and tosses the card down on Dylan's desk without even looking at him, and then she turns and smiles at Ravi. I didn't know you knew my name, she says, tilting her head to one side. I look at Dylan to see what he's making of this disgustingly mushy moment, but he isn't paying any attention to Lucy. He's got his eyes glued to the jar of leeches. I know that look. I've seen it 1,000,000 times before. Chapter 41, Ravi. It's your turn to pick a card, says Mrs. Beam, holding out the basket to Dylan. He groans. This game is so lame. What's the point? You can't even win. Try to muster a bit more enthusiasm, will you, please? Says Mrs. Beam. Not every game has to be about winning. If you ask me, Dylan is getting off easy. Mrs. Arun would have made him kneel down on the floor or sit facing the wall if he had talked back to her like that. Dylan makes a big show of swirling his hand in the basket to stir up the cards. His overreacting is even worse than Shakti Kapoor's. I can't believe I ever wanted to be his friend. Abracadabra, he says, pulling out a card and waving it in the air like he's done something special. Nobody responds, not even Lucy Mulligan, who is busy staring at me for some reason. Dylan shakes his hair out of his eyes and reads what is written on the card. Quitting is not an option. He rolls his eyes. Gee, I wonder who this could be. Then he marches straight over to Tim or Jim, I still don't know which it is, and puts the card down on his desk. Is it you? Dylan asks in a voice that says he's confident his guess is correct. Nope, says Tim Jim, shaking his head. It's not me. Dylan can't believe his ears. What do you mean it's not you? He says. It has to be you. Everybody knows you're the kid who just won't quit. Tim Jim looks at him and shrugs. It's not me, he says. You see? Mrs. Beam's pistachio eyes are twinkling like little green stars. Maybe this game isn't so easy after all. Well, if he didn't write it, who did? Asks Dylan, looking around the room. I wink at him and smile. I did, I say.